I said it before and I'll say it again. Life moves pretty fast. You don't stop and look around once in a while, you could miss it.
Welcome to Production Report, the podcast about telling the stories behind some of our favorite movies. I'm your host, George, here to dig around and take you truly behind the scenes. In the realm of sci-fi, there are only a handful of film franchises as big as Alien. While many of the characters change, all of the movies are about this horrifying species of alien that uses other living creatures to lay its young. The character most familiar with these creatures, which by some luck always crosses paths with it, is Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver. Together, the original Alien and its sequel, Aliens, made over $160 million at the box office domestically, not accounting for inflation. Aliens was released in 1986 to not only financial success, but also critical acclaim, with 2 Oscar wins, and a highlight in the early career of a young James Cameron, director of Titanic and Terminator. Needless to say that there was interest from the film's studio, 20th Century Fox, to get a sequel made, but the road to Alien 3 was not an easy one, and in the end, it led to what was at the time one of the most divisive films in the franchise. This is the story of Alien 3. It's 1987 when 20th Century Fox approaches Brandywine Productions, the production company behind the series, about the idea of making an Alien 3. And it's an idea that's met with not the most excitement. Many of those who were sought to helm the project were worried about doing the same beats of the last 2 films. They also weren't really interested in the ideas of James Cameron, and potential directors stressed that they wanted creative freedom. Renny Harlin was one of the multiple directors attached to the project, who at the time was hot off Nightmare on Elm Street 4. His 2 main ideas for the film was one that showed the aliens' homeworld, or another that had them invading Earth, which is interesting considering where the series would go years after Alien 3. The idea that they landed on was one of the aliens coming to Earth, but the frustrations of creating something new and not following the same mold carried out throughout that first year, and in an interview, Harlan explains why he left the project.
I believe that when you are doing a sequel and you're part of the series, that you do want to give the audience, in a certain way, you want to give them the same kind of an experience. They expect to see aliens and they expect to see the heroine and certain type of situations. So I do believe that you want to give that satisfaction, but at the same time, I do believe that your job is to invent something new and offer the audience something new, because otherwise you're just rehashing what people before you did. So that was always my goal, and ultimately the reason why I had to make the hard decision and go to Walter Hill and say, Walter, I'm really sorry. I think I've been working on this for a year, and we've done illustrations and we've worked on all these storylines, but I really feel like somehow we keep circling the same premise. And for me, it's not different enough from what the audience has seen before, and I just can't get excited about the idea of just having more guns and more aliens.
It's worth noting that even before Harlan leaves the production, they lose their lead writer. So a year into this project, and the team has lost their writer and director, effectively wasting a year. This narrative of people coming and going on this production is a prevalent one in the development of Alien 3, and there are several others in the story that I just don't have enough time to mention. But one important name is Vincent Ward, who was eyed as a possible director or writer for the film. Fox reached out multiple times to Ward. After the 3rd phone call, because he at first had no interest in making a sequel, he agrees to fly over to LA from his home in Australia to meet with the producers. He comes up with this idea for a movie about a wooden-like planet where Ripley and the remaining crew from Aliens land. In the interest of keeping it brief, this planet has a civilization of monks that practice their own religion. They find the ship with Ripley and friends, unaware that in the ship there was an alien egg. The story is then about this planet, the theology these monks believe in, and how the monks believe that Ripley and the alien are the work of some sort of devil. It's a story that is very much out there, and of course this is only the cliff notes of it, but it's very different and dark. Ward meets with the executives, not really thinking that they're going to bite, and it turns out they love it. Sigourney Weaver also likes it, And that was important, because Sigourney Weaver was a producer on this film and had quite the say on the creative decisions made on it. Ultimately, Fox decides that this is the idea that will become Alien 3. Fast forward a month later, and the studio suddenly puts a release date for the movie, a release date of 1992. Keep in mind that this is about 1990. Not long after that, a teaser trailer is released. See if you can catch what's wrong.
In 1979, we discovered in space, no one can hear you scream. In 1992, we will discover on Earth, everyone can hear you scream.
If you have a hard time finding what's wrong with this, it's that it's based off the screenplay of the aliens coming to Earth. The same screenplay that they threw out the window. It's not what Alien 3 actually was at the time. At this point, Ward is understandably upset and very confused. He and his set designers are about to start making sets and concepts, and it feels like the studio has swept the rug from underneath them. And they are still in pre-production. There's no cast yet or a full crew. So things are rocky. But hey, it's just a teaser, and yeah, it's upsetting that they were given a date that they didn't agree to, but things can now really start moving, right? Well, suddenly Ward is getting phone calls from producers about how they don't like the wooden planet, that they don't like the monks and would prefer them to be prisoners. Suddenly, they want the planet to be a mining colony, not what Ward agreed to. These aren't the only demands that the studio has. They give Ward a whole list of things that they do not like, and give him the ultimatum that if he doesn't play ball, then he's fired. Ward explains how the situation felt.
By this stage, because the original Alien and Aliens had become very successful, it had a different meaning than the first Alien had, which was relatively low budget, relatively unknown star, not too much was at risk. Now everything was at risk. This was the franchise, and this was what was going to keep the studio going, this one film. So they look at me and they go, well, this guy from New Zealand, he's got this kind of wild idea, he's made these independent films. I don't know, do we trust him or not? So there became a lot of cooks involved, in the making of this broth. So the whole thing became shaky with my star, and I love working with actors, with my producers wanting something a lot safer, with a release date looming. It was like being on a platform and watching all the things crumble below you, and frankly trying to do this dance to kind of keep everything together.
So unceremoniously, Ward is taken off the project. The studio gets what they want. They hire new writers to edit the script to their liking. So yeah, it's rough. And it's at this point that it seems like the studio is going to make this movie happen out of sheer force of will. And they just need a director to get the job done. Enter David Fincher, who at the time was not well known. He had some experience making music videos for stars like Michael Jackson, and he also used to work at Industrial Light and Magic, but this would be his first film. Alien 3 would be his directorial debut on a major motion picture. It was his big break, and it would be a trial by fire.
I thought Fincher was a great idea, and so I liked him right away. Then we were in this big meeting at Fox, and with all the suits and everything, and I think he was wearing an animal rights t-shirt. I finally said toward the end of the meeting, so how do you picture Ripley in this movie? And he said, I don't know, bald?
With David Fincher on the team, it was time to do rewrites on the script once again, following the wishes of the studio, of course. But at the same time, production needed to get going, so these rewrites needed to happen while Fincher got production actually started. At this point, things begin to stabilize a bit. The movie starts to actually get done with the skeleton Ward built, but of course, and maybe you can guess where I'm going, it was a production with a lot of studio interference. Someone on set was always reporting to the studio behind Fincher's back. Studio interference is one thing, but also Fincher didn't write the original concept. He also didn't have much time to really take in the story. So many Fincher-specific ideas came out on the spot, and a lot of them didn't even make it to the final cut of the movie. Fincher really was just trying to make sure this train didn't go off the rails. Those who've seen Alien 3 will remember the dog alien, an alien that is birthed from a dog in the prison. This was not Fincher's original idea. Originally, one of the several oxen that are used for labor at the prison were supposed to be the host for the alien, but I guess the studio thought that a dog would be more interesting? And if you've seen Alien 3, you also know that the special effects on that dog alien looked really rough, even at the time. The reason for that was that the studio also didn't want to spend a lot of money on the movie. Fincher originally wanted to work with Industrial Light and Magic, where he used to work, but was turned down. This would be the same studio that would be a year away from releasing a little movie called Jurassic Park. The studio that they went with wasn't really up to date with the latest techniques, and unfortunately it shows. It is especially unfortunate because Alien 3, in terms of effects, almost objectively looks worse than the two movies before it. But in the end, a movie did come out of all of this. But the first cut of Alien 3 was not the movie that we got. That first cut was over 3 hours long, compared to the 2-hour theatrical cut. Fincher showed it to the studio, and they didn't like it. Many things changed from there. For one, the original cut was way more violent. In it, there was an autopsy scene involving Newt, the little girl from Aliens. Here's what one viewer of the original 3-hour cut had to say about that.
I saw the rough cut of the film, uncut, and there were some scenes in there that were pretty gross. There was an autopsy scene on the girl that I like certain gore in films. I do it, and it made me sick. It really grossed me out, and I remember that people got up and left, walked out of the theater at the time, and I was just saying, this will never be in the film. They can't show this stuff. It was just too much, I thought. And when the film came out, it wasn't in the film.
With a final say from the studio, the movie was severely edited to the final theatrical cut audiences saw in 1992. In the end, that movie was released to a very confused audience that walked out of the theater with a mixed to very negative reaction. I personally fall in the camp of it not being very interesting, but it's certainly not a mess. And considering what went on behind the scenes, it's impressive that it's cohesive at all. David Fincher would of course go on to bigger things, and the future of the Alien franchise, in terms of quality, really is up to debate. Fincher rarely ever talks about the experience. It seems like he sort of blocks it out, but he did speak about it once in this BBC interview.
I'll say this. If the movie is great, I'm going to get too much credit, and if the movie sucks, I'm going to get too much blame. My first movie, it's fairly well known, was a disaster. I stupidly felt that the people who were financing it had more to lose than I did if it was bad. I sort of allowed myself to be steered into this communal making, and then when the hits the fan, all of a sudden everybody scatters, and you're the guy standing there going, wait, who's got a suggestion now? So if I'm going to take the blame, if I'm going to take the brunt of it, I'm going to make the decisions.
A few years after the release of Alien 3, a new cut of the movie was put out by 20th Century Fox, titled The Assembly Cut, and not the director's cut because Fincher doesn't want anything to do with the movie. It's a cut of the movie that mixes in a lot of that unused footage and recontextualizes a lot of the scenes. It's longer, but it's a cut of the movie that many fans of the series can agree is better than the original. It's a cut for a movie that still has issues, but it's also a movie more worthy of the Alien name. And that closes the loop on Alien 3. This episode of Production Report was made possible with the information from the documentary The Making of Alien 3, Claudia Wilkman's interview with David Fincher for the BBC, and James Kaplan's piece for Entertainment Weekly titled Sigourney Weaver Talks About Alien 3. That's all the time we have today on Production Report. Until next time, keep watching movies and stay curious.